So everybody turn on your review that I handed out. Problem number 1. And it says, hold on, actually. Number 1. What does it even say? Problem number 1, it gives you a problem. It says 8 plus 2 x minus 4 squared. And then it says when x equals 6. So it's kind of, whoops, I gotta click a button, hold on, sorry. Let me move this thing down. Can you see that or not? So 8 plus 2, there we go. 8 plus 2 times x minus 4 squared when x equals 6. So remember how to do this? What you do is you write the whole rest of the problem down the same as it is, except for the letter x. And then I'm going to switch to blue so it's easier for you. For the x, I'm going to plug in 6 because x is supposed to be 6, right? Then 6, then you do the inside of the parentheses first. And 6 minus 4 is 2. And then what do I do next? Who thinks I should do 8 plus 2 first? No, I should not. Who thinks I should do 2 to the power of 2 first? Yes, you're right about that. It's because you do exponents next. So 2 to the power of 2 is 4. So then, now do I do 8 plus 2 or not? No, you have to multiply first because you have to do 2 times the 4 first. The multiplication happens before addition. So there's my cracks again, I'm sorry. 8 plus 8. 8 plus 8 is what? 16, correct. Exactly. So 2 8-year-old twins, they're actually 16. Did you realize that? Well, at least they've had 16 years of life together. So that's the answer to number 1. Are you feeling good about number 1? Okay, perfect. Now let's go to number 2, because that's what we do. Number 2 says -7 less than or equal is less than or equal to -5. It says write out the meaning of the inequality. So when you write out the meaning of it, you just say this: -7 is less than or equal to. I have something real quick. Keep next to it, actually. -7 is less than or equal to -5. That's what you have to do when it says write out the meaning. And I know that just seems like a lot of work, but would you rather have a hard question or something where you just have to write out a sentence by hand? Right. That's what I feel like. So I know it seems like you're in first grade again if you have to write out a sentence by hand like this. But if that's what the final wants you to do, I would just be happy that it's not harder than that. And then it says, is it true or is it false? So is this a true statement or a false statement? It's true. Because -7 is, if you look at a number line, -7 would be that way and -5 would be here. So -7 is lower than, -7 is less than or equal to -5. That's true. Correct. Okay, now, you ready to go to number 3? Because you feel like a honeybee? Okay, number 3, as we can see. Because we go we. Okay, so 3, 1 over 36, take away 1 over 9. Can you just write impossible for the answer? Do you think that would count? No, I don't think they would accept impossible, although right now it is not possible to actually subtract it right now. What do you have to do to it though? Because you're not allowed to just write impossible, unless it really is impossible. What do you have? Yep, you have to find the common denominator, and 9 goes into 36, but 36 does not go into 9. So the common denominator is 36. And how do you find that denominator, or how do you create that common denominator inside of the fraction that does not have it yet? What do you have to multiply 9 by to get to become 36? 4. Good, you're close. I'm sorry. So 1 over 36, take away 4 over 36. Now, sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I'll go in circles. I'll say, wait a second, 4 over 36 reduces to be 1 over 9. Then I go back to my original problem. But so don't go in circles accidentally and reduce it now. What you have to do now is to combine these two denominators into 1. So 36 becomes a single denominator. And then on the top, you join together the separate numerators, the separate tops of the fractions. So 1 take away 4 is -3, right? Then you go ahead and you subtract them. But you don't subtract the bottom of the fraction though. So don't make the mistake of accidentally saying 36 take away 36 is 0. Because the bottom of the fraction is not the thing that's being subtracted. The bottom of a fraction is just a kind of fraction that's being subtracted. It's only the tops that are actually getting subtracted. So that's why the bottom stays the same. And now you can reduce it. So how can you reduce the fraction by on the top and on the bottom, divided by into both of them to reduce that fraction? Can divide by what? 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom, right? So -1 over 12. That is the end of the great and magical and marvelous problem number 3. Perfect. Any questions? Now, the one important thing is, as you're doing these questions, you have to show your work. So you've probably learned that for 12 years already, but you have to show your work when you're doing these kinds of problems, because you can use scientific calculators. So if you go boom, 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 type it into a scientific calculator, it'll show you the answer. So there's a couple problems already I've noticed on a couple of tests that I had to not give all the full credit to on the test that I'm just grading right now, because there was like a complicated square root to simplify, or maybe not a square root, but like several radicals to square or something like that. And sometimes there was only one thing written down on the test, which was the final answer. And so you have to show your steps as you're doing these problems to make sure you get credit. Because officially I have to follow a grading guideline they call it a rubric. And if I don't follow the rubric, then I won't be fair, so I have to follow it. And it says that if you just have the right answer, but not the steps for it, then you can only get 1 point out of 4. So every test question and final question is worth 4 points in all my math classes. And to get all 4 points, you have to show work. And sometimes students who are not even close to the right answer actually get more points than the ones who have just the right answer. Because you can get credit for steps that are correctly working towards the right answer, even if you don't have the right answer. So always show your work. And then that's the end of number 3, as you can see. Then number 4. What rhymes with 4? More. Let's do problem 4 because we love it even more. And it says -1/2 divided by -2 over 7. And by the way, if you're afraid about the final, just make sure you do these problems carefully and correctly on the final. Because if you're panicked and you don't do any of the problems right on the final, then you'll get like a lower score. But if you get all these problems correct, you'll still get just as much credit for them as if you did all the hard problems correct. So -1/2 divided by, parentheses, -2 over 7. That's what we're supposed to do. So once again, as it stands right now, this problem is impossible because you can't really directly divide by a fraction. So can you just write impossible? No, but you can do it. But how do you do it though? To divide fractions, or to divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So its reciprocal is -7 over 2. Like that. So to divide by that fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal with that. Then you do it. So -1 on top times -7 on top is +7. And 2 on the bottom times 2 on the bottom is +4. Whoa. This is lucky because usually you have to simplify the answer, but guess what? 4 doesn't have any common factors with 7. So it's good. It's already good to go. You are already done with it completely. So that was the answer. Guess why that's such a good problem? Because guess what 7/4 actually stands for? Does anybody know what 7/4 stands for? Let me write it like this.
Oh, July 4th.
July 4th. Yep. So there's actually July 4th on this test. Well, at least on there's July 4th on this review at least. I'm not sure if it will be on the test because the test gets randomized with new numbers. Okay, then let's do number 5. 5 because we're glad to be alive, right? And it even starts with 5. 5 to the power of 2 minus 72 divided by 6 to the power of 2 times 9 minus 8. So I'm sorry, it's kind of small. There you go. So this question actually once caused almost a, wait, I forgot something. I said divided to the power of 2. Divided by something, but what to the power of 2? 6 to the power of 2. You obviously can't just divide by the power of 2. Okay, there we go. So it's 5 squared minus 72 divided by 6 to the power of 2 times 9 minus 8. So this problem like this, exactly like this one time, divided the whole internet into a civil war. Do you remember that? It was like 4 or 5 years ago. Half the internet, like 51%, said the answer was one number, and half the internet said it was the other number. And everybody got mad at each other. You know what I'm talking about? So what? So she remembers it too. So what the difference was is this. Remember the word that says, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally? Who remembers that? If you just learn that directly and you don't remember what it means, you'll actually get the wrong answer because are there any parentheses? No. So skip the P for please. Excuse. Are there any exponents? So let's do them first. What's 5 squared? And then let's do the next exponent. What's 6 squared? Yep. And then let's bring down everything else. The minus 8, the times 9, the divided, and the negative, and the 72. So I've only done the exponents at this point. Now this next part is where I've got the whole internet all in a bloodbath. Because if you do please excuse my, then you would do multiplication next, and you do 36 times 9. And then you get another, and then you divide by that afterwards. But the truth is, though, multiplication and division in algebra are equivalent because dividing is actually a kind of multiplying. In fact, division is just multiplying by the reciprocal. So really, actually, dividing is multiplying just by the reciprocal. So if you see a division sign that comes first, even if there's a multiplication sign that comes later, you still do this one because it comes first, even though it says, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So you think my means multiply, and you think you do that first before division, which is dear, like my dear Aunt Sally. But actually you do division first if it comes first in the problem, because it is actually a kind of multiplication. So I'll do this one first, and we'll get 72 divided by 36 is 2. Is there a ghost in the door? And how many decades do you think it took for this drawing to start getting like that? 50 years, I don't know. So 25 minus 2 times 9 minus 8. Okay, so then what's next? If I subtract 25 minus 2 and get 23 next. But even if I like Michael Jordan though, well, even if I do, I can't do that because order of operations says you still have to keep multiplying before you can start subtracting. So 2 times 9 is 18. Then you have 25 minus 2 times 9, which is 18, minus 8. Now what do I do next? Now I can start subtracting. What's 25 minus 18? 7. And then 7 minus 8, because remember, why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. But 7 minus 8 was negative 1, right? Boom. Perfect. Is that right? That checks the answer that I have. Negative. And once again, you can do this problem on your calculator, of course, just to check yourself. But you have to show all these steps, though, in order to get full credit for it. Because if you don't know how to show these steps, wow, spooky. Then you can't really prove that you know actually how to do it by hand. So you have to show the steps. Okay, now number 6. Number 6 is going to be one of your favorite ones, I hope, because it's so good. -2, -3. It says plot this point in a rectangular coordinate system. Doesn't that sound like rocket science? Rectangular coordinate system is just a y-axis and an x-axis. And then, so you go left 2, down 3, like that, right? And then you plot the point at that specific spot. And then you can label it -2, -3. So now when you're doing the test by hand, that's the way it works, is you just draw 2 lines. If you really want to be a perfectionist, you can even label the 2 lines. Now I'm going to assume, because you don't really have a choice, you have to do it this way, but the y line has to be the vertical line and the x line has to be the x line. So I'm not going to force you to label them because it's redundant, because it has to be that way. There's no other choice. But I'm just labeling them right now so you can see which one is which. That's the y and that's x. And then you go left 2. I'm going to even label that point on the x-axis right there. That mark represents -2. And on the y-axis, that mark, okay, my iPad just froze. There. That mark is at -3. So if you go to both marks simultaneously, this point left and this point downwards, you'll touch the. If you go to that point vertically and you go to this point horizontally, you'll touch only this point at once, right? So that's where that point is. And then you're done. So plotting a point is another essential element of algebra that you should expect to see on the final. And then number 7. Wait, what rhymed with 6? I forgot. 6. Okay, it's problem 6, because if you walk through the tall grass, sometimes in the spring you have to watch out for ticks. That wasn't a very good rhyme for 6, but oh well. Okay, then 7. What rhymes with 7? Heaven, how about that? So 7, it says x plus 1 over 7, that's interesting, equals 1 minus x plus 6 over 8. This is a problem. Well, it is a problem, I guess. But it's not the kind of problem that you can't do. So this is a problem that maybe if you want to get an A, you should learn how to do this kind of problem. It's not as easy as some of the problems, but it is actually super easy if you know how to do it. So what's the common denominator? It's 7 times 8. So I'm going to write that down off to the side at the top. Common denominator is 7 times 8. And so I'm going to multiply everything in the whole equation by that. So I'm going to multiply this little thing right there by 7 times 8. Then I'm going to multiply 1 times 7 times 8. And now it's hard to see what I'm doing, but I just don't have enough room. Hold on. Sorry. And then that one times 7 times 8. So why in the world am I putting the 7 times 8 beside every last little thing in the whole entire problem, as if I didn't have anything better to do? It's because when you solve equations with fractions, that's the way to do it. Because by putting the common denominator beside each fraction, it actually does the opposite of getting the common denominator. It actually gets rid of all the denominators. So watch closely. I'm going to use red because it'll emphasize what I said. Cross out the 7, cross out the 7. Cross out this 8 in the bottom, cross out that 8 in the top. And the only thing left is presto, parentheses, x plus 6, x plus 1, parentheses 8. That's the only thing left on the left. It's kind of cool, the only thing left on the left. And then 1 times 7 times 8 is left in the middle. And then minus, and then now here's where it gets tricky because this whole fraction is a group. But if you cancel out the bottom of it, that makes it no longer be a group, but it actually is a group though still. So you have to put parentheses around it because it's still a group, even though it looks like it's not a group anymore. So what you get left is x plus 1 times 8 equals 1 times 7 times 8 minus parentheses x plus 6 times 7. That parentheses is probably the trickiest part of this whole problem because it didn't have a parentheses at first. Because remember, this line right here that groups it into a group, that line in the fraction is just like parentheses on the top. But once the fraction is gone, you still have to keep it in a group. So you have to add parentheses around it. And what about the 1 times 7 times 8? Is that hard to understand? Why didn't this 7 and this 8, why didn't they get canceled out? Because 1 did not have a fraction in it, right? So there's no fraction underneath the 1, then nothing is going to cancel out from the numbers that you put beside the 1. And now let's solve it. So x times 8 is 8x. 1 times 8 is 8. Equals 1 times 7 is 7. And then 7 times 8 is what? 56, I believe. Yeah. Minus, now you distribute this, that's x times 7 is 7x, but it's also negative, so you put down negative 7x. And then 6 times 7 is 42, but it's also negative as well, so you put down negative 42. So what you get is 8x plus 8 equals 56 minus 7x minus 42. Then we're going to combine together all the x's onto the left side. So this 8x is going to stay where it is, but the negative 7x is going to go to where it is on the left side. You're going to get 8x plus 7x on the left side equals, and then the 56 and the negative 42 are going to stay where they are on the right side. Interesting. There's probably a door open someplace. And that's making the wind pressure open and close that door. Now, there's one thing missing. What about this 8? Where does that 8 have to go? It needs to be put on the other side. So I need to put that 8 over there, which changes it from positive to a what? To a negative, right? So then you get 8x plus 7x, which is what? How much is 8x plus 7x? 15x. So there's a famous plane called the X-15, I think. Biter plane or a supersonic plane. Ooh, hello. So 15x, and then 56 take away 42 is 14. And then 14 take away 8 is 6. So it equals 6, right? And then we have to do it to get x by itself now. Divide by 15 on both sides. Then it crosses out the 15 on the left, and you get 6 over 15 on the right. Now you need to reduce the 6 over 15. What number can you divide that by that's in common to the top and the bottom? 3. So you would get x equals 2 over 5. So x equals 2 over 5, and that's the answer. Sweet. So that was sensational number 7. So do you think they have, by the way, do you think they have math in heaven? Since 7 rhymes with heaven?
Absolutely.
But maybe if you have math that helps you build mansions though, because math builds mansions. If you don't have math, you might just have like like a little tent in your backyard. So y equals, no, I'm sorry, wrong thing. I was looking at the answer actually, not the problem. So this says jx plus ky equals L. The JK stands for just kidding. Not really. Jx plus ky equals L. So there's tons of letters. In fact, there's no numbers in this problem. So how in the world can you do this problem? You can only do it if they tell you which letter you're supposed to get by itself. So they said, do this problem to be solved for y. So y is the variable that we have to find. So I'm just going to circle it. I found it. And then I'm done. Is that right? No. That actually used to not be funny for me, but now it is. So you can't just solve it for y by just circling the letter y. But you do have to find it though, but finding y means something different than just circling it. Like where's Waldo? How do I find y in the mathematical way for finding y? I have to get y by itself. So look at the value of jx. Pretend like jx is just some great big number. Like this is how much food you would eat if you lived on Jupiter. It would be jx. You can take that number, put it on the opposite side, right? What happens to something when you put it on the opposite side of a fraction? It becomes net negative, right? The ky equals L, take away jx. Boom, like that. Now, what do you have to do to get the letter y by itself? Well, you pretend like k represents a number, because basically you're pretending like all the letters except for the one you're solving for. You're pretending like they're just numbers. But this, we're at 10 y. Divide by 10 to get y by itself, right? So if it's a ky, you also do the same thing and you divide by k to get y by itself. Perfect. And then k divided by k is 1, or it just goes away basically, and you get y equals L. Take away big J little x over big K. Big K is the pop brand of Kmart, I think. Is that right? Does anyone remember Kmart? No, it's really weird is Target was actually basically crashing worse than Kmart was. And then for some reason, Target got to be popular again, and then Kmart went down. Okay, so y equals L minus jx over k, and then that's the answer. So can you remember how to do this problem for your final? And of course, even if you can remember it, practice it again. Have you ever heard of a dress rehearsal? Do you know what that is? A dress rehearsal is where you practice something the way it's actually going to be in real life to make sure you don't have any surprises or unexpected glitches. So what I'd recommend that you do is go maybe print out another copy of this review from Moodle and see if you can solve these questions by yourself in a nice quiet room sometime. Okay, there we go. There's number 8. Okay. And then number 9. Number 9, what rhymes with 9? It's a good thing that rhymes with 9. Feeling fine. How about that? So 5x minus 2y equals 10. And we're not supposed to solve this anything like that. We're supposed to plot the intercepts. So how do you plot the intercepts? Well, find the x and the y intercepts. And how do you find the y intercept? Close. So the y intercept is what y is when x is 0. So we're going to find the y intercept, we need to plug 0 in for x. So plug in 0 for x into the equation. And then you'll get 5 times 0, which is just 0. So you'll get negative 2y equals 10. Then divide by negative 2, and you'll get y equals negative 5. So y-intercept is actually negative 5. So then you have to graph that on the equation. So draw the graph. Now you're gonna have to do this by hand on the final, because I want to know if you can do math like like people used to do for hundreds of years before they had computers in the last 25 or 30 years. So in a lot of academic disciplines, they talk about how that everything you learned is going to be out of date in like 8 years. Like last Wednesday, some of the people decided to make their degrees go out of date in 8 years so that you couldn't finish your degree if it took you more than 8 years, which I think is kind of silly. Isn't that silly? Like, what if it took you 9 years to finish it? I think that would be fine. But in a thing like math, though, the good thing about math is it never changes. I mean, the language you use to do it with could possibly change a little bit. But as far as I know, even people in every language use the same language for math. Isn't that crazy? So there we go. Y equals negative 5. So on the y-axis, which is the vertical one, you're going to go down to negative 5, and then you actually do plot a point at that point. At that point on the y-axis. Then you're going to find the x-intercept. How do I find the x-intercept? By plugging in 0 and 4, y, right? So I repeat this process and I plug in 0 for y, then I'll get 5x minus 2 times 0 equals 10. And I'm going to work upwards instead of downwards. So 2 times 0 is 0, so I'll get 5x equals 10. And then I'll divide by 5, so I'll get x equals 2. So the x-intercept is 2. And 2 rhymes with u. So boom. So x-intercept's 2 and the y-intercept is negative 5, and you plotted 2 points on the graph, and then it says use the intercepts to graph the equation. So you have to draw the whole line of the equation, and all you do, once you have the first 2 points plotted on a line, what do you have to do to finish the line? Since lines are straight, you just draw a straight line through the 2 points. Then you're done. So in order to get full credit for this equation, you must plot the x and the y-intercept both. You can't just plot some other random points in the results. You need to plot those 2 points. And then to finish getting credit for it, you have to draw the line that goes through those 2 points. And then you'll be done. Now, let's go to number 10. 10. Find the slope of the line passing through the points. And it gives you some points. 3, 6, and 4, 8. Okay, so find the slope of the line passing through the points. The slope formula is y2 minus y1, which represents the change in y, over x2 minus x1, which represents the change in x. So first of all, I want you to stop thinking about it in terms of arithmetic and think about it in terms of like growing older. How much change is there between age 3 and age 4? How many years of difference is there between age 3 and age 4? 1 year. Because your change in x is 1, positive 1, right? So you actually could just put a positive 1 in the bottom and you wouldn't have to use the formula if you wanted to. And what's the change in y? If you were y, you'd be 6 years old, growing up to be 8 years old. How many years difference is there from 6 years old to 8 years old? 2. So the change in y is 2. So some students are called like savants or something like that, and they can actually do math better. They don't actually do it in terms of like subtraction. They can just know, like some people see numbers in colors or whatever, and they can like multiply 13-digit numbers together in like 10 seconds or whatever, just by imagining the way it looks or something like that. Now, I can't do that in most cases, but it is pretty easy for me to visualize how big of a change there is between something. Now, if you didn't do it that way, you could still do it like this. Plug in the y2. Whoops, let me move that over. Whoops, I got to get past the crack. So plug in the y2, which is 8, minus y1, which is 6, plug in x2, which is 4 minus x1, which is 3. 8 take away 6 is 2, and 4 take away 3 is 1. So you'd still end up with 2 over 1, whether you just use the formula, or if you did the change in y over the change in x. Either one of them is fine with me, as long as you show that you got 2 over 1, and that's the slope. So does the slope simplify at all? What is 2 divided by 1? 2. So your final answer is 2. Isn't that just too easy? But that's not all, folks. Unfortunately, there's 2 parts to this problem. The second part of problem 10 says to describe what this means. What does it mean? It says indicate whether the line through those 2 points. So remember, those points are like points on a line, and that's the slope of that line. So the slope of that line is 2. And it says tell whether the line that goes through the points with the slope of 2, if it rises, or if it falls, or if it's horizontal, or if it's vertical. So if the slope is 2, is that rising, falling, horizontal, or vertical? What does that mean? It's rising. Correct. It's positive, and so it's rising. So any slope that's positive is rising. Now, the tricky thing about rising is you're looking backwards, rising is actually falling, because rising is measured from left to right. So that would be rising. But if you're looking at it from this way, it would be falling. That's that direction. But anyway, so it's better what Amanda said. If the slope is positive, that's how to tell if it's rising. And it is positive, so it's rising. What if the slope's negative? What would that be classified as? Then the slope would be falling. The line would be falling. And then if the slope is, what about if the slope is not positive and not negative? What if the slope is 0? What if the slope is 0? What does that mean? Close. Which one is it? So some people have said both of them. So if a slope is 0, that means the slope is a change. If something is always, if you remember Peter Pan, wouldn't it be nice if you could always be like 10 years old? Maybe, I don't know, maybe would be boring. Maybe 5 years old would be better. I don't even know, but maybe 3 years old. But if you never got older, then you'd never be changing, right? Your slope would be 0, right? So if the slope is 0, then that is horizontal. And if your slope is undefined, that's vertical. So vertical is when you're not actually going forwards at all. So you can't really be sloping unless you're moving forwards and up. So if you're just straight vertical, you're not actually going anywhere. So that's called undefined. So that's just a little review of slope. Then our last problem for today is number 11. 11. And it says f of x equals negative 3 over 5x plus 4. And I really like this kind of problem. My first time teaching college algebra, I was trying to think about what to teach, because that's the class after this class, and I don't remember even for sure anymore, but I think I might have decided to teach how to do this question first. So let's try it. Ready? So this could be, depending on who your college algebra teacher is, this might be your very first question in college algebra. The first thing you do, it says to give the slope of it, is to do what? How do you give the slope of this equation? The slope is the coefficient of x. So the whatever's in front of x, when you have the, so first of all, this line is in the form of mx plus b. So something times x plus something. When it's in the form of mx plus b, the slope is m. The slope is whatever is in front of x. That's the slope, and the y-intercept is b. It's whatever is by itself. So b stands for by itself. And then, so that's the first part of question 11. The slope is that, the y-intercept is that. And then it says to graph the equation. So on the test, you'll have to graph the equation without software. You'll have to do it by hand. And that's the fun part. I actually like that part. Ready? So I don't know why that part of the thing won't There we go. So the first thing you plot is actually the last thing you found, which is the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is a definite point. Boom, 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 boom. 4 on the y-axis. So go up to 4 on the y-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then plot. Then the next point is a relative point. In other words, the next point isn't a definite point that's exactly in a certain place. The next point depends on where your first point is. So that's why you can't do the next point until you've plotted the y-intercept. So I'm going to switch to red. And the slope is right there. What does the slope mean? Rise over run. So a rise equals -3. Run. My screen froze, sorry. The run equals 5. So you're going to vertically go -3. So go down 1, 2, 3. So go down 3 units, and my circles won't circle because I have no idea what's wrong with my iPad. It keeps getting worse and worse. But go down 3 and then over 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after you go down 3 and forward 5, then you can go back to black. Whoops. Go back to black and plot that point. And I'm going to label that point because it was over a 5 and it's vertically is at 1. And your first point is at 0, 4. Then you have to plot the graph. So draw a straight line that goes through both points. There we go. So that is the end of the review for questions 1 through 11. And you're going to be doing those questions on the final next Monday week from today. And then in class on Wednesday, we'll do the next 11 questions. You'll be doing those next Wednesday and so forth. So see you later. And wait, I didn't do attendance. Hold on just a second. Let me make sure you get points for that. Can everybody just write your names on the back of this page over here as you're walking out? Don't forget to write your name on there before you go out.